sure if I should.
Okay.
So,
It gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce a hero. Really, Julie has fixed, saved, rehabilitated gazillions. That's a metric term. It's two yin-yangs. Houses, buildings, and probably knows more about rehabilitation and retrofits of existing buildings than I know. And part of this, in my view, is that we need to save the existing stuff, fix it so it lasts forever, and make sure that people can actually afford to live in them. And so, please provide a magnificent warm welcome for Julie.
Thank you. Oh, I guess I'm on. Hi, everybody. I hope you're all tired and hungover, and so if I see you nodding off, I don't really care, okay? But because I know why. So I'm Julie Klump. I'm Vice President of Design and Building Performance at Preservation of Affordable Housing. I've been coming to summer camp for a long time. My partner always called it my boondoggle. I looked it up because I thought that would be fun to put on there. It's really it's more of a waste of time, but it's having a good time too. So, maybe it applies, maybe it doesn't. But anyways, that's why I have the boondoggle on here. I do have to admit though that my first summer camp, I came and it was kind of a small enough group that we all introduced ourselves, and that was great. And then the session started, and I'm kind of looking around like, I'm not at the wrong conference because I don't have a fucking clue what these people are talking about. So I looked at my paperwork and I was like, okay, all right, just relax. You're here, just pay attention. And then I end up in the crawl space with Joe, sipping on some good wine. And then, Betsy makes an announcement that only women can drink out of wine glasses in the backyard. So, over the course of, my experience at summer camp, it's gotten better and better. And I just have to repeat what everybody has said in that this community is so great because the information just flows and people are eager to help. And I know that I'm better at my career from knowing a lot of you in this room and the help that you've given me and guidance. And thank you. So POAH's mission is to preserve affordable housing, as Joe mentioned. We were started in 2001, and the goal was so many affordable housing developments were at risk of being sold, converted to market rate, and so the goal of POAH was to come in, pull the financing together, and try to buy these properties. If they were good enough to rehab, we would rehab. Then we got into doing some redevelopment if they weren't. So this is an image from one of our properties in DC from the 1950s. I've been at POAH for 17 years, and over the course of that career, there's been a lot of improvements in the way people think about buildings. When I started, lenders wanted us to pay for bathrooms and kitchens because it was something you could see, something residents could benefit from. And then over the course of time, we explained that we couldn't do window replacement on turns, which is basically when somebody moves out and they repaint the walls. We couldn't really do windows at that point. So we started to really be able to improve enclosures when we had a tax credit allocation. We've been trying to convert to all electric. Being in 12 states in DC, there's some states and cities that I don't know that I would convert to all electric at this point. Detroit's got a pretty dirty grid, so burning natural gas might be a little cleaner at this point. Some new technology we've had some success with. We're doing a lot of renewables, and at the moment we're sort of counting carbon and trying to reduce it, and then we also were looking at a little bit of embodied carbon. So here we are, 11 states in DC, over 12,000 units, 138 buildings, properties with close to 900 buildings. The building utility structures are different everywhere. There's senior buildings, there's family buildings, there's buildings that we pay all the utilities, some buildings where residents pay all the utilities, and then a mixture of all of those in between. And how we keep up with that 2,500 accounts that we're responsible for, and close to $16 million in accounts, is that we really look at a lot of data. And the utility, we use a third party to process our electric or our utility bills, which gives us raw data. Then we drop it into some platforms that normalize it so that we can really compare. And then a couple times a year, we take that weather normalized data, we put it into a priority list, we identify the top 10 or 15 in each sort of load group, fossil fuel heating, base load electric, and then we focus in on those just to try to keep up with our own portfolio. And then when we do a rehab, we take that data 6 or 9 months later and do performance highlights to see if what kind of savings that we've generated. So another map, we're in just about every climate zone, and we have the highlighted locations are where we have passive house projects going up. It seems like passive house vs. new construction is kind of a no-brainer. It's getting easier and easier, although every time we go into a new city, a new state, there is sort of some education that we have to bring along. So how do we fund these projects? So I'm not a development person. I didn't study business, so don't ask me any questions about this slide. So all of our apartments, most of our apartments, they either have a rental subsidy like Section 8 that some of you have heard from, or we've been given a tax credit allocation for that unit, which gives us equity that we can sell, that we can invest in the building. So they're called LIHTC, low-income housing tax credits. The feds hand them out to states. The states establish their goals. They develop what are called qualified action points. If you, it's very competitive. If you meet their criteria and they think you're shovel ready and you've got other sources, then a lot of times you can be successful. In Massachusetts right now, it's really competitive because there's a bond cap because they all come out of bonds. And so we have a lot of projects in the queue hoping to get those credits. Those credits require an affordability contract for 15 years. We usually stipulate that it's in perpetuity because that gives us kind of a leg up, and that's what we do. And we own and manage, so we kind of give a shit about how we invest and that this money comes in and stays. So utility incentives used to be, we'll buy you some new refrigerators or replace all your light bulbs, and they were such small grants or rebates, incentives, that they never really touched our performance because they came in at the end of the deal, they were small enough that it didn't really affect basis or those other sort of financial things. But lately there have been some huge unprecedented amount of money that's been set up for affordable housing, energy efficiency. There's the green retrofit and resiliency program that the Inflation Reduction set up through HUD. I don't know, it's $800 million. We've so far collected $60 million for projects. I think that's more than anybody else, but that means then we have to deal with HUD and try to figure out how to get the projects done. But it's a lot of money, and we have projects that are totally sourced from these green funds. Then there's the GGRF, which is more of a loan program. So anyway, so there's a lot of money that's being dumped into affordable housing, energy efficiency, resiliency, carbon reduction, that we're taking advantage of. So this is how we fund them. This is a typical sources and use table. Our capital stacks are usually very complicated, and most of the entities come with design reviewers that are not qualified to review design. They come with a lot of requirements that sometimes conflict with the program that they're representing, and they all come with a bunch of lawyers. And so one of my sort of theories is that the reason affordable housing takes so long and is so expensive is because there's so many fucking lawyers involved. One set would probably be plenty. So how do we encourage better buildings? You know, initially it was, oh, it's going to save money. So lenders would, you know, they would, if we could model and show that we were going to save 25%, they would say, okay, we'll give you 10. And the reason that matters is because if we can reduce our operational costs by more of a percent, then that looks better in our pro forma and we can have more debt. But they didn't trust us that we could get any better than 10. Some of our projects we don't get better than 10, but but that means something, that we're going to save money, you know, we're going to have cash flow, et cetera. Like I mentioned, the loans and grants. Utilities now have, as Andrew mentioned, in Boston or in Massachusetts, it's called BERDO, it's utility reporting. I think we have, I don't know, 9 cities and states that are now requiring us to report utilities over a certain size building. Even Miami, which it'll be interesting. There's threats of fines for not reducing carbon based on that data. There's fines for not reporting it. I love that kind of requirement, because then we can talk about energy efficiency before we get to a point where we're not meeting the utility reductions that they're required, and we can sort of throw those threats of fines around to get people to do sort of the better thing. You know, some people agree that when we improve indoor air quality, which is one of my focuses at least, which sometimes causes the utility cost to go up, but it improves health, and there's lots of anecdotes out there, even from our own properties. So how can we require it? And I know we just had a good session on trying to figure out these building codes. I love building codes because a lot of times, especially the specialized opt-in code, now requires passive house. So no questions asked. Just if you're going to build new in Boston, we don't build anything less than 12,000 square feet. So check, we're going to do FIAS. And, you know, we're going to pay consultants to get us there. We're going to teach architects and engineers how to get there. Builders, there's you know, we can do it. And I think on the new construction side, it's sort of a no-brainer. I should have probably explained that I studied architecture. So if I talk about things like I know what I'm talking about, but obviously I don't, that's why. But the utility reporting is, that's all over. That helps. FIAS certification, you know, if it becomes a requirement, if it's something we can encourage because it makes a better building, there's durability, there's resiliency, all those things we can argue. A lot of times we can get people to say, oh, that sounds like a good idea, and then we can spend the money to get there. And we've actually, in our Boston projects, you know, we've worked a lot with the Mass Clean Energy Group with some grants to try to really move the market a little bit. And our first project was probably a 5% premium to hit the passive house, but we didn't start the design as a passive house, so there were some things that had to change. And then a recent one was a 1% premium. So I think as the markets new markets sort of figure this out, different way to build, maybe different sequence, but it's really doing the same thing, just better. The data tracking, we've made a commitment to the Better Climate Challenge. You know, it's to reduce 50% of our carbon in 10 years, which seems completely insurmountable, but I guess there's some good press by being committed to that, so we're going to take it. Our current CEO is big on strategic plans, so we have that in our strategic plan that all of our new construction buildings starting next year will be FIAS certified. We want to, on a rehab, we want to reduce by 25% on energy, electricity, and gas. We want to start to decarbonize, et cetera. So I thought this was sort of interesting, and Andrew, maybe you can explain this to us. This is how Massachusetts describes their goal for utility reporting and emission reduction. And I'm not going to read it because I don't think I can, but it's really hard to sort of even understand. But that's how everybody's sort of getting to this sort of carbon reduction goals. States have them, cities have them. This is another resource that we created. It's called The Basis of Design. It's a web platform that includes, I don't know, there's 13 or 15 sections, enclosure, windows, mechanical heating, cooling, ventilation systems, and it's really kind of a base, you know. It's not necessarily, it doesn't reference FIAS, it doesn't reference, you know, sort of COPs, things like that, but it's typically better than code. So when it's in the contract with the architect, it's in the contract with the GC. So if they start trying to do stupid shit like not seal duct boots and things like that, we can say, well, it's right here and you own it. So, so if they forgot to bid it, then we usually get it for free. But so anyways, it's a great resource. We're editing it all the time. We're updating our window section because it actually has hung windows in there, and we just as soon not have those in our projects. So anyways, just sort of showing that that's another way that we can sort of have this resource out here, like a building code or a FIA certification, and we don't necessarily have to pay attention because there's real obligation there. These are a few passive house projects. We have many others. I'll talk about the exploded axle in a couple minutes. Maine, that's a great project because it's for real disabled people, and it has a lot of services and structure and computer technology that gives people in that situation, MS, ALS, a real chance to live independently. Passive house building behind a historic bank, and the architect was determined to have a glass box, which I can't wait to heat and cool that. But the back part will actually be passive house, and there's some real tricks to that one because it does adjoin the bank at a certain wall, but I think now we're that's a adiabatic, whatever that word is, wall, so we've kind of figured it out. And then there's a lot of buildings on the Cape that look kind of like this one, townhouse buildings that are more expensive to get to passive house. They're easier to build, what we've discovered for GCs to figure this out, but they're more expensive per square foot. So I'm just gonna whip through a couple projects. I probably am not gonna be up here for 90 minutes, but maybe you have a lot of questions or comments. So this was our first project, and I put the glamour shot there that says loop because you wouldn't believe me if I told you that that's what this is called. I don't get to name things, but I find this one sort of interesting. It was a parking lot that was owned by the MBTA. There's a train line that runs behind the building. There's a bus. The reason it's called a loop is because there's buses that go all the way around, you know, constantly with the big bus stop at the back. There's a greenway for bicycling back there and hiking in the woods. So it's got a lot of, it's kind of a nice gateway into some of this transportation, which is an issue. But you can kind of see the construction. We've mineral wool. I think we did a fluid applied air and water over Alpen windows. We've had really good luck with those. But the issue is that we have a per floor ERV system, which we like to do because it avoids shafts and trying to detail and make airtight shafts. And we feel like the ductwork is a little smaller. We thought it made sense. On this building, the intake and exhaust louvers, or these are intake, are on the back of the building that face the train station and the bus lane. And so if we're going to go anywhere near these louvers, which we need to at the moment to clean them out and change the screens, whoever's going to be anywhere near the lift has to go through training from the train or the MBTA, has to be certified in certain things. You have to hire, 100 police officers to guard the street, fire department for whatever reason. So